Well, when I was preparing for this sermon, I just kind of recapped what Pastor Timothy had spoken on with spiritual gifts and with living in light and truth decay in our society. And I've been talking to the youth a lot about subjective truth and how subjective and relative truth has affected our society and affected our church and has kind of molded how we see our world. And so I chose Ephesians 5, 1 through 14, as you can see on the screen, as the text that I'll be preaching from. And so in verse 1 of Ephesians 5, 1 through 14, we see, "Be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children." Verse 2, "And live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave him up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But among you there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality or any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Nor should there be obscenity, obscurity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. For you were once in darkness, but now you are in light in the Lord. Live as children of the light. For the fruit of the light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases the Lord." Verse 11, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible. For it is the light that makes everything visible. This is why it is said, 'Wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.'" So if you've ever studied Ephesians, and most likely most of you have, is that Ephesians was written by Paul and to the church in Ephesus. And Ephesus was a very thriving city in the known world at that time. And it had a lot of different cultures. It had a lot of different things, a lot like America. And Paul writes this not because there's a certain need, but because he just wants them to be that more fruitful, that more productive by imitating God, by living a life of love. And this word that is used in the New International Version, imitate, what does that really mean? Imitate is to mimic or to copy. And I see this evident in the 18th century. If you know anything about apprentices or people that wanted to be a blacksmith or an ironsmith or a printer, they learned under their master and they copied and mimicked them for 4 or 5 years or however long. And so this scripture is calling us to mimic Christ, to mimic God by living a life of love. Love is an act of worship. And if we're supposed to act, love causes us to act. In youth, I've talked about compassion. And if I'm compassionate towards Tyler, it's going to cause